Meet my new friend Ike. Ike is an American entrepreneur and full-time resident of the Philippines, where he has lived for the past 16 years. After traveling extensively throughout Asia, Ike identified the Philippines as an ideal country for investment. He went on to establish offices in the Philippines for his outsourcing company, and he has never looked back. Today, he resides on the island of Boracay with his family. In our conversation, Ike and I explored a range of interesting topics, including white privilege in the Philippines, the challenges of modernization, his initial culture shock, his experience learning Tagalog, and so much more. I hope you guys enjoy the video. So you used to live in Makati as well?
Yeah, I moved to Makati to start my outsourcing business in 2009.
Okay, 2009. So that's also like 16 years ago, is it not? Or how many years ago was that?
Yeah, about 16 years ago, I moved from LA to Makati to start my company, Staff Virtual, and we've been building teams ever since.
Wow, so how did you decide on the Philippines?
The Philippines is an ideal place to put up an outsourcing BPO business. The English language, the kindness of the people, it all makes for a great place to set up shop. One of my good friends actually started flower.com. It was one of the first ever online flower stores, and he moved 80 seats to the Philippines a long time ago. And then came out here and visited his operations, and I was really impressed by what he was doing, the money he was saving, and all of his performance metrics increased. And that's when I decided to move to the Philippines to start Staff Virtual.
Now, you said that you moved from LA. Is that where you're from? Are you from California?
No, I'm originally from Kansas City, but I moved to Los Angeles after I graduated from the University of Kansas.
Now, California also has a really large Filipino population. Were you like acquainted with the culture at all there before you did your first trip?
Yeah, of course, I've interacted with Filipinos pretty much my whole life. My first girlfriend, actually in fifth grade, or first girl I had a crush on, was a Filipina. You know, there's a decent sized population in America. I think it's the third largest Asian minority in America. Yeah, I've always liked Filipinos. I've been traveling in Asia for 25 years. So, I came to the Philippines for the first time in early 2000s, I think in 2002. Very, very interesting trip. I traveled around Thailand and other countries and spent about a week in the Philippines, and it was definitely an eye-opening experience.
What was that first trip like? I mean, like when you got off the plane in the Philippines from the States. I mean, I imagine it's pretty different than Kansas City.
Yeah, I mean, it was a big culture shock. I went to Naga City. It's a very kind of rural area. I was really having a hard time finding food. I pretty much ate at McDonald's the whole time. Yeah, it was a big eye-opening experience, and I've never seen a lot of things like I saw on that trip, and big culture shock for sure.
How long were you there for the first trip?
I think about a week. I actually met my girlfriend there. She was half Filipino, Filipino American, and we went and visited her family in the provinces. It was a really big eye-opening experience just seeing how they lived and what their daily life was like. It was a huge culture shock coming from the USA for sure.
Okay, I'll be honest. Learning to speak Tagalog is pretty hard. But with the right resources, it can be a whole lot easier. And I've got you covered with my Beginner's Tagalog course. With 18 comprehensive video lessons, this 2-volume course makes it simple to start building your Tagalog skills from the ground up. Plus, you'll get lifetime access to PDF vocabulary sheets that will help you practice and retain what you learn. If that sounds good, click the first link in the description below to start learning Tagalog today. Now, back to the video. What would you say like the biggest culture shocks were for you, especially at the beginning?
Filipinos are very polite. They don't like to say no, right? I mean, yes means maybe and maybe means no, and that's for all of Asia. People don't communicate typically in a very direct fashion. Usually it's indirect. The concept of keeping things pakikisama, sometimes in the way they communicate, what they say is not exactly what they mean all the time, and they can be very verbose. So, a lot of my training, what I do when I hire people is help them communicate in a more direct, straightforward way, because that's how Westerners like things and our clients like things. But, there's a lot of things you have to deal with, from kind of going back in time to, moving from America where there's a lot of conveniences, and then moving to the Philippines in 2009. Like, there was no Amazon, there was no Uber, e-commerce did not exist yet, essentially. So, if you wanted a taxi, you had to stand on the corner and you might be waiting for a taxi for an hour in the rain. If you want decent food, you have to go to really expensive places. And, of course, adjusting to the food is not easy, right? It's very different. I've traveled a lot. I mean, I've traveled over 60 countries. I've been to a lot of places that are much, much less developed than the Philippines. I'm comfortable traveling. I'm comfortable going around places that I'm not familiar with. I can talk to anybody. I consider myself sort of a worldly person, man of the world, so I can adapt and go anywhere. And I'm pretty comfortable in any situation. And like you, I speak Tagalog pretty well. So one thing I did when I first got to the Philippines is I really worked on my Tagalog when I first got here. Because when I lived in Spain before, I spent too much time around other Americans and English speakers, and I didn't really get into the language until like month 6. And so when I went to the Philippines, I told myself I wasn't going to make that same mistake twice. So I really kind of attacked the language from day one.
I think that's really important. I think there's a temptation in the Philippines for English speakers to just get by with English because you totally can. You don't technically need to learn a Filipino language, but I do think you miss out on a lot by only speaking English. And so starting with the language, I think, is a great thing that oftentimes, unfortunately, gets overlooked. I mean, I'm a little bit biased as well because I started with the language, right? That was kind of my first introduction to Filipino culture. And I just saw that that was going to be my conduit, into the culture and a way to help me understand the people. And so, yeah, but it's been very beneficial for me. So you do speak some Tagalog now.
Oo,
Oo,
pwede.
pwede naman. Marunong ka. Ay nako. Para sa iyo, mahirap bang matutong mag-Tagalog?
Mahirap ang salitang, pero mahal ko ang salitang dito sa puso ko. Foreignoy na ako. Foreignoy na ako. I'm half
Foreignoy ka
Filipino
na.
na.
Pusong Pinoy yung tawag, diba?
Yeah, meron pusong Pinoy talaga. Seryoso.
Anong pinakamahirap sa wikang Tagalog?
I would say probably just the grammar. Once you get into the more advanced form of Tagalog, like the grammar's difficult. Even for Filipinos, I mean, it's a difficult language and there's not like hard and fast rules. So, you talk to 3 different tutors, you get 3 different answers on how to say something, sort of like the legal system, right? You talk to your lawyer, you get 3 different answers on how to proceed. It's not easy, but it's definitely the easiest language in Asia to learn, even easier than Bahasa Indonesia, they say.
I think something that makes Tagalog quite challenging, especially I think it's getting a little bit better now, but I started learning it 11 years ago. And, for you, it was even longer than that. There's not a lot of instruction. There's not a lot of formal instruction. So when you say that there's no hard and fast rules, I think there are, but it's just hard to find them because there aren't academic textbooks in the same way that they have them for other more commonly studied languages, especially Indo-European languages, Spanish, German, Italian, English, of course, right? You can find tons of resources where with Tagalog, sometimes you kind of have to make your own resources. And so I've noticed that with myself as well, that, even though I've spoken the language for a really long time, I never really had any formal instruction. So I was piecing things together on my own. And sometimes I'll make assumptions that I think this is how the language is, the grammar is. And then I'll find out years down the road that, I was actually saying that wrong, but I didn't have a structure to tell me what I was doing wrong or what I was doing right.
Yeah, they're so polite, they won't tell you you're saying it wrong, too.
Yes, that is so true. That is so true.
I mean, that's one of the things I love about Filipinos. I mean, they're so polite, they're so nice. It's next level. Just watching that Vitali guy, I did a post on Facebook. This Vitali guy is going around Philippines insulting people and just how patient everyone was. In any other country, he would have got punched in the face, the 3rd person he walked up to.
Yeah, I saw those videos. That was crazy.
Imagine doing that in Baltimore or Moscow or any city in the Western world. Even the guard just let him take his hat and run off. In the States, you would be tased immediately and thrown in the back of a cop car.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Filipinos are very flexible, very willing to accommodate for other people. And the language is a way that they do that as well, right? By speaking English with people from other countries. And yeah, it's definitely true that he wouldn't be able to get away with that in another place. In one way, it shows the patience of the Filipino people, but in another way, it's also extra frustrating because it feels like he's picking on people that aren't going to fight back.
Yeah, he was. And a lot of these shock vloggers come to places like Asia because they can get away with stuff like that. They can act like a fool and on the subway in Japan or do something ridiculous and they're not going to get taken to task for it. But I think he made the cardinal sin of humiliating people, right? That's the thing you don't do in Asia, right? Like it took me really years to understand this concept of face and Hia and how much it matters here and pride and all that. I mean, they're very proud people, right? So even though they're putting up with it, deep down they're like seething.
Yeah, it's not like they don't have the same emotions that everyone else does. They're just not acting on it in the same way.
That's one of the great things about Filipinos in a way. I mean, I don't like it when people are overly, obsequious, but at the same time, a little bit of patience goes a long way. And it was crazy how he just sort of like, he realized he wasn't getting a rise out of people because people were like, responding like how they do here. So he just kept like upping the ante more and more ridiculous stuff until he got a reaction. It was like an abusive relationship where like the guy like acts more and more psycho just to goad his girl into freaking out. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, like because that's what he was looking for was the reaction, right? I mean, the whole idea of live streaming that is that kind of rage bait content where you're not looking for a fan base that's like gonna defend you. You're looking for a fan base that will attack you just so you can get those kind of rage clicks. It's like I don't understand how you'd want to cultivate an audience that just hates you, but I guess whatever pays the bills, people will just go for it.
I mean, we all know that rage and anger is the best clickbait. Like if I were to do a video, like I've done videos, I have a YouTube channel, like I haven't done a lot in a while, but I posted like 10 things I love about the Philippines. If I did another video, 10 things I hate about the Philippines, that one would get probably 10 to 100 times more engagement and views. I mean, anything negative is what really activates people.
And some people do, criticize content that's talking positively about the Philippines. They say that is like Pinoy baiting, right? Where you're trying to take advantage of a culture in order to monetize on it by, saying things that people want to hear so that they'll click on the video. And from my perspective, it's like, well, there's always good and bad in every country, right? The Philippines isn't an exception to that. There are good things and there are bad things, but why would I choose to focus on the bad things, especially as someone who's not from there? Like, is that really my position to be criticizing a country that I'm not from? Like, why wouldn't I choose to see the positive things? Because there are a lot of positive things to choose from in the Philippines,
You find what you look for, right? I mean, I can go by a little village. There's villages, I live in Boracay. I'm on top of the hill. I have a great view, but at the bottom of my hill, it's another world. And I can either see the poverty or I could see the happy kids playing in the street with their sandals. You find what you're looking for. That's the thing about the Philippines. Like there's a lot of like urban areas that aren't that attractive, right? There's a lot of housing that's not nice or whatever. But, you can also see the smiles of the people and the happiness of the people and what they're doing. And in many ways, even though they might not have as much money, I think the average Filipino could very well be happier than the average American, like on average. It wouldn't surprise, especially now with all the angst and issues happening in the States. So, you really realize when you move here that money doesn't buy happiness. And, true happiness really comes in with having like love in your life, community, people around you that care. Filipinos are never alone. That's a beautiful thing. There's an epidemic of loneliness in the Western world. Like I can't tell you how many friends I have that are basically alone all the time. Filipinos back in the States, Filipinos are never, they can't be alone. They go crazy. Put a Filipino in a house for like 3 days. You're like, they're going bananas. They're much more social. Their bonds are much stronger. Their families or their tribal bonds, whatever you want to call them, barangay. I mean, they're just always around other people. I think it's much better to be poor and have a ton of friends than to be rich and to be alone. I mean, I've been both, right? But if you're in a big house by yourself, you're not happy. In fact, the bigger the mansion, the more lonely you feel.
That's a good way of looking at it. Like you really can't buy it. You can't buy community either, right? Those the friendships that you really want to have are ones that have come about organically. It's your neighbor down the street. It's someone in the barangay that you get along with. It's your family. I mean, those kind of connections. Like you can't trade that for anything, right?
Yeah, and those. You're right. Money doesn't buy community. It can buy a bunch of fake people around you. And in fact, that's a big issue, especially stars. They have that issue, right? Like you don't know who your friends are. Like, LeBron James, his whole life, he's wondered, does that guy really like me because of me or because I can do something for him?
Transactional relationships, right?
Oh, for sure. And that's how a lot of life is, especially in the States, especially in a place like LA, where it's like you're going out and the first question people want to know is, what do you do? And she's trying to figure out if you're a producer and you can put her in a role or something. So, there's a lot of that in the States. I mean, I think the best thing about the Philippines in a lot of ways is the people and just how simple they are. In a lot of ways, I tell people this, and it's a good thing. Like, I like the fact that the Philippines is sort of behind the times. I tell people, like, you come to Boracay or you go to the Palawan, it's like you jumped into DeLorean with Michael J. Fox. You typed in 1985, you're there, right? Take away people's cell phones. It's just like how it was in the 80s in America. Like, you could see where people are at by where their bikes are parked, kids playing in the streets. And so since it's sort of 30, 40 years behind Bangkok, let's say, I used to think Bangkok were pretty similar. Now I realize Manila would never catch up to Bangkok. But at the same time, since modernity has hit Bangkok, they've really changed a lot too, right? They're having a lot of the same issues: depression, anxiety, loneliness, all those sort of first world. There's issues that happen when countries modernize. Affluenza type diseases.
That's happened in our countries as well. I mean, historically, out of necessity, we were much more community minded. In the time of, let's say, my grandparents, people needed to rely on each other more. They had less money, they had less opportunities. With modern advances also comes the temptation to be more individualistic, right? Like, for example, living together in one house. That can be a necessity, a financial necessity, but it also brings community. Once you have a little bit more disposable income, there's a temptation to say, well, I want to live on my own, right? Or another example of that is taking public transit, right? You get in a bus, you get in a train. That's the most economic way of getting around a city. And as we've modernized, we've developed more and more public transit lines, right? But as you get more money, temptation to just go buy a car. I don't want to be stuck in a bus with other people. I want to drive on my own. Pretty soon you're in a house on your own. You're in a car on your own, going to an office to sit on your own. And then you have no reason to interact with other people. You want to get some food? Uber Eats. They bring it right to your door. You don't even have to talk to a waiter, right? Like, you're literally like cutting out every social interaction from your day, which is very, very convenient, but also could be kind of lonely, right?
Yeah, the very peak of that, you're flying around in a private jet all by yourself. So it never really ends. I mean, I saw something on the internet the other day about percentage of people in Europe that still live with their parents. In Southern European countries, of the less affluent countries like Greece and Italy, it's like 40% of people still live with their mom and dad. Spain is something like 37%. Then you get up to the richer parts of Europe, the German-speaking parts, Scandinavian parts, all the most affluent parts of Europe. They're all German, Scandinavian speakers. It's something like 6% of Swedes live with their parents. Are those people living alone in their little concrete 60 square meter boxes with IKEA furniture? Are they happier than Greek people who still live in a big house, multi-generational household? I don't think so. I was thinking about my grandpa. My grandpa lived in small town USA. Back then, everyone had big porches because they didn't have air conditioning. You knew what was going on. You knew the Smiths had poker night on Thursday night. You knew you were going to watch football at John's house because they had the only TV on the block. Everyone knew everyone. The institutions were strong. He was a Shriner. He was a Mason. At the end of work, he was going to the bowling club. He had bowling. None of that's happening now. None of that is happening now. Like, everyone is just alone on their phones.
Do you think that Filipinos give foreigners preferential treatment?
Oh, without question. They even admit they do. I can't tell you how many times I've walked into a mall and, my girlfriend, fiance gets the drumstick treatment in the bag. She gets searched and I just walk right through, right? It happens all the time. It's white privilege to the max. I think that's what's intoxicating about the Philippines for a lot of white guys. It's like peak white privilege in Asia. I can't think of a country in Asia that likes white people more, frankly.
Do you think that it's also dependent on what country you're coming from?
I think so, but they like all foreigners. I mean, honestly, like, they're just welcoming to all foreigners. I think being American is the best place to be from, without question. Every Filipino has a relative in America. You say you're Canadian or whatever, Romanian, they don't know where that is. But America, everyone knows America, right? Like, there's 4.5 million Filipinos living in America. So I think that's, our colonial history, all that. But even like my friends, I have friends that are vloggers here, friends that are from Africa, all over the world. Like, it's Brazilians. I mean, they're all put on some sort of pedestal. And I think it used to be this way. I think, 40 years ago, if you went to China as a businessman, you got the red carpet treatment. If you went to Thailand, if you went to Japan, we were seen as like these brilliant people. But it's not that way anymore in most of Asia, right? Like, the white privilege has definitely gone down. And I think that's a good thing. I don't think people should get their butts kissed just because of the way they look.
Yeah, I think that it's unearned. I mean, like, I just look like this. I mean, you don't know if I'm a good guy or not. I could be a jerk.
Yeah, I tell people all the time, like, don't be proud of things that you haven't earned, right? Like,
Yes, exactly. Because I've seen people too, like you were talking about BGC being a bubble and how it brings in a lot of people from the West who just want to live kind of like, a more luxurious lifestyle. They want their money to go farther, but they don't really know anything about Filipino culture. And sometimes there's this attitude of entitlement. Like, I have more money and I'm from the West, and so I want these things and I want them now. And I'm kind of like, yeah, but okay, your money automatically goes farther just because of the country you were born in. The passport you have allows you to travel anywhere you want in the world, and you happen to be white. So how many of those things did you earn on your own? Like what did you choose in that? Like, you were just born in a different country. Like,
yeah,
that
I don't
blows my
understand
mind.
pride like that. I like being American, whatever. I like my passport, but I consider myself sort of a citizen of the world now. Like, I'm proud of what I built. I'm proud of my family. I'm proud of my company. Proud of my friend group. Proud of my relationships that are generally positive. You should be proud of what you've earned, not that what you were given.
As someone who's lived there for so long, what do you think is like something that would surprise people about the Philippines if they went there for the first time, let's say?
It's pretty amazing how Americanized it is in a lot of ways. They're not watching Bollywood movies. They're watching Hollywood movies. They're playing basketball. They're not playing cricket. Like, very Americanized. I think the similarities to Latin America would surprise them. And then the beaches and the natural wonders. It's one of the most beautiful countries in the world, especially the beaches. Everyone's always taken aback by how nice people are. Like, you always hear that. Like, Jesus, nicest people in the world. Like, you can make a case that Filipinos are the nicest people in the world. I mean, I've been to like 63 countries. I've never been to a place with nicer people that don't have a hidden agenda, right? Like, you go to Thailand or some of these other countries, you're like, okay, this person's being nice to me, but I'm basically being treated as an ATM here. Like, they want something. Filipinos are just nice to be nice, right? And how non-confrontational they are, that's a big shock too. It's a pretty amazing place. I mean, almost everyone, if they haven't had a bad experience in Manila or NAIA airport, which is really a dreadful airport, most people love the Philippines and they can't wait to come back.